unmuted myself. Hi everyone, my name's Olivia and I'm going to be hosting the Magdalen Tutor live stream this afternoon. Thank you for anyone who's listening, either right now or later this evening, and we really hope that this gives you an opportunity to ask our tutors some of your questions, just to meet our tutors, find out a little bit more about what it means to be a tutor at Oxford, what work is like here, and maybe a little bit about the courses that the tutors who are joining us today study. So I think we'll go around and everyone can introduce themselves. Please make sure you're asking questions in the Slido chat, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. So if you could all, introduce yourselves, say a bit about your subject and where you're from, and maybe about your research, because I think everyone's research is really interesting. Tim, do you want to start us off?
Hello, I'm Tim Barraclough. I'm one of the tutors in biology at Magdalen, and I work on evolutionary biology. So I'm interested in how lots of different things evolve, partly microbes, bacteria, partly microscopic animals. That's it.
Great, thank you. Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe Sampson. I'm a law fellow. I work principally in old law, so I work mainly on Roman law and early modern, sometimes medieval European law, but I teach modern land law as well as Roman law and old stuff too.
Brilliant, thank you. Alexi?
Hi there, I'm Alexi. I am a tutor across both physics and engineering science. I was a student at Magdalen myself, and my research spans two areas. So I'm a magnetician. I'm interested in the phenomenon of magnetism, particularly at the quantum level. And I also run a group that works on much more practical things, looking at how we can use magnetism and electromagnetism in the service of cultural heritage. So I do geophysical surveying, that kind of thing. And I am also Magdalen's fellow for widening participation. So I work with Olivia, Amy, and the rest of the outreach team at events like this.
Well, thanks. And finally, Christian.
My name is Christian Leitmeier. I'm a tutorial fellow in music here at Magdalen. I mostly work on the historical side of music with a specialism in music before 1800, but I've got fairly wide-ranging interests, including editing, paleography, etc. I'm originally from Germany, but I don't begrudge England the deserved victory of yesterday. Well, once every 55 years is definitely well-deserved. And I came to Oxford after a rather extended spell at Bangor University in North Wales.
Great, brilliant, thank you. So we got loads of questions coming in, and a very nice broad one to start that I think we'll all answer. Well, you'll all answer because it's such a good question. But what is Oxford looking for from prospective applicants? So nice and broad. Tim, do you want to start us off?
Yes, I mean, the first thing to say is there's no single model that we're looking for. There's a range of different things that could make up a good Oxford student, and we're looking for people. I mean, overall, I guess the way to describe it would be people who are interested in their subject, display enthusiasm and a sort of depth of engagement in their subject. But there are many different ways that you can demonstrate that and display that in terms of things you've done or things you're interested in doing. Yeah, we're looking for people to be themselves in their application and think about why they want to study this subject here, and then tell us why, and that's what we're looking for.
Cool, thank you. Joe?
Yeah, I'd echo all that. I guess there are two parts to it: ability and enthusiasm. Ability we kind of take it for granted, but that's what comes through a lot in the application through achieved grades, predicted grades, and so on. But then the really hard part is working out who's actually going to get the most out of their time here in terms of intellectual fulfillment. It's a lot of hard work, and we're really looking for those who convince us that this is a decision they've made seriously and spent a lot of time thinking about, and they've convinced themselves, yes, this is what I want to do for the 3 or 4 years. So I'd agree with everything Tim said about there being no one candidate we're looking for. There are so many different ways of showing that engagement and enthusiasm for the subject.
Great. Alexi?
Oh, I would also echo everything that Tim and Joe has just said. It's about a combination of really good academic ability, and that is, I would perhaps add a little bit to that. We're not looking for people who have already, I don't know, built their own particle accelerator. I'm a physicist. That's an example that springs to mind. Are cloning beans in their bedroom. You don't necessarily have to have superhuman powers. I think sometimes people think that we're looking for something academically that is way, sort of somewhere unobtainable. That's really not true. We're looking for people who can satisfy our standard offer. And also have a huge amount of enthusiasm for their subject, and also demonstrated a kind of dedication to the subject that they're going to need on the course. So, for example, the courses I teach, physics and engineering, are quite mathematically loaded here at Oxford. That is true of all of the basic science courses, actually. So we're looking for people who have are able to demonstrate it to us, both through the materials that they submit and also in the context of the interview, that they have enthusiasms that are really directed towards getting stuck into that kind of course. So I don't think I've really added too much to the basic messages there, enthusiasm and ability, but hopefully you would sort of get the idea that this is not, that there's no magic formula, and secondly, we're looking for humans, right? We're not looking for some sort of superhuman person that that isn't you. We're looking for you if you have those two qualities.
Great, thank you. Christian, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, well, I would echo all that has been said before. So we're definitely not looking for brains on sticks. We're looking for humans who are driven by a keen interest, and these interests could be quite personal and quite quirky, and perhaps what really makes the candidates stand out is if they have a certain intellectual curiosity. So if they don't shy away from some of the big questions, even though they might be unanswerable, and if they are willing to engage new perspectives and basically willing to push themselves as much as the boundaries of knowledge.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, that gave lots of really helpful and very encouraging tips. So moving on to kind of the application process, what factors do you think makes a good personal statement? I'll ask Joe first, and then anyone, if you've got an answer, just chip in.
Individuality, I think. A lot of people approach a personal statement, I think, with the belief that they've got to say certain things to get in. Like, there are certain things we expect you to have done or to have read, and that's just not the case. Really, the personal statement is your one opportunity in the applications process to say, this is me and this is why I want to do this subject. So I think Christian just mentioned it can be a bit quirky. I remember one current person, just finished their second year, spoke at length about Phoenix Wright, which is a video game about a maverick defense attorney, and how much it inspired her to look into what law's actually like. And, you know, it gave a real insight into her journey into the subject. You can do it in so many different ways, but do see it not as a box-ticking exercise. It really is an opportunity to say, this is what the subject means to be, and that's why I want to do it for the next few years.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Anyone else got anything to add about personal statements?
No, I think that I would just add that, really, just to reinforce Joe's point, I think he's kind of said it all. It's called a personal statement for a reason, right? Make it personal. A lot of people do treat the personal statement as if we are looking down a list and sort of checking certain things off. You know, I've been on the rugby team, I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. You know, we're not doing that. We're just interested in hearing a little bit honestly about you and your enthusiasm for the subject. And we do not have a preconceived idea about how you might express that enthusiasm. So just sock it to us. You know, explain what really gets you excited about the subject that you want to study.
Maybe I can add one thing, because this was a question that came up on the Slido this morning. I think people have been a bit concerned in current circumstances. People haven't been able to do some of the opportunities that they would have maybe outside their curriculum that they would normally get. And my response to that would be, we always recognize that not everybody has the same opportunities. So it's certainly not the case that you have to have done volunteering or these other things. Not everybody can do that. So that would certainly be true in the current situation where we recognize this last few years. It's been very difficult to do some of these things. So there are lots of different ways that you can demonstrate your interest. They don't have to be events that you've been to or volunteering and things. They can be other activities that are still feasible in lockdown and so on.
And if I might add just one point to that, there is absolutely no need to lay on the full rhetorical firework. So I know that many people start with an inspirational quote, but this is not necessary at all. As long as you make sure that you communicate who you are, and you can normally do this best in your own words. That will perfectly do the trick.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, opening sentences to personal statements are a bit of a bugbear of mine. Also don't take an anecdote off Google. That's something that sometimes people do. There was a few years ago, there was a chemistry anecdote about like spilling a chemistry set and burning a hole in your pajamas when you were 6, and then you wanted to study chemistry, but about 240 people used it in their personal statement that year. So I don't think it was quite true. But just on personal statements, on the Maudlin YouTube channel, there is a full personal statement workshop, which goes through lots of tips about how to write it, things to consider. And also, if you follow the tasks in the workshop, by the end of the workshop, you'll have a draft of 1 paragraph of your personal statement. So I would really recommend, if you're struggling for somewhere to start, you go and look at that. And we've also got a resource pack on the Maudlin website. So if you're not really sure where to start, obviously, as our tutors have kind of said, it's really important you follow your own interests. But if you're like, I have no idea where to start, I just need the name of a podcast or some kind of first start, we've got a few suggestions for you. So then you can go on and start to find your own resources and books or podcasts or documentaries or whatever it is you want to look at. So next question, following through the application process, what would you recommend people do to prepare themselves for an interview? Christian, do you want to start?
So music at university is a very diverse subject. And so you cannot prepare all aspects that will be called for in the interview. Well, in a normal year, you would have the chance to audition, and so you will definitely practice your instrument and basically prepare a short recital. So for the actual interview, it's probably best not to fret too much about it, because in order to create a level playing field, we will probably ask you questions about things that we are certain none of the candidates had studied before, but it's a good idea to perhaps practice discussing things of academic interest about music with your peers or with other people, just so that you get used to answering questions which might not be concerned with extracting the right facts from you, but basically questions that will help you to develop an argument, etc. So that would be my top recommendation.
Brilliant. Anyone else got any recommendations for maybe the different subjects?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that. So I do admissions for physics, where our interviews are quite technical. We will talk you through a series of problems, and those problems are designed to be able to be solved using the tools that you've learned in standard A-level maths and physics. We're not trying to test what you know. We're not going to sit you down and say, look, what's the rest mass of an electron, and expect you to come up with a number. That's not what it's about. It's about using the analytical skills that you developed in the course of your A-levels to engage with us on a series of problems, some of them open-ended, some of them not quite so open-ended. But the idea is to have a little, it's like a sort of mock tutorial. It's very similar to what we do when we teach you when you're a student here. You can't really do too much to prepare for that. As Christiane was saying, the best preparation for those technical sorts of questions like the music interviews is just to kind of, try to relax, be yourself, and try to remember that we're not going to try and ask you trick questions. There are some things you can prepare for though, and will really help you if you do. So my top tip is to make sure that you're familiar with what you wrote in your personal statement. Because it's very common when you go into an interview for people to ask a few questions at the beginning, even in a technical interview, to try to get you to relax. And we very often look at your personal statement. So if you've put, for example, I really enjoyed doing this project, which was about simple harmonic motion, for example, in your personal statement, we might pick up on that and say, hey, you did this project on simple harmonic motion. Tell us a little bit about that. Now, if you're prepared to tell us a little bit about that, that's fantastic. And that's a really good start for everybody. But where things can be a bit awkward for both of us is if you've just completely forgotten that that's what you wrote, and you have to kind of remember what simple harmonic motion is again. And everybody, we start to feel anxious, you feel anxious. And I don't want to call it a disaster, but it's just not, that is not the way to, the best way to start. So remember what you wrote in the personal statement. And also think about this experience of the personal statement relating potentially to the interview. It doesn't always happen, but potentially to the interview when you're writing the personal statement. So don't put stuff in there that is likely to trip you up. Put stuff in there that you're really keen to talk about. So, don't make the classic mistakes of saying, I really enjoyed reading, book X. Every subject has a book X. A good example of a book X for us is A Brief History of Time, Stephen Hawking's book. Great book. But if I had £1 for every time somebody had said that they enjoyed reading it and then couldn't remember any of the contents, I don't want to suggest that they hadn't read it, but, that I would have a lot of pound coins. So just be honest and come prepared to talk about the things that you wrote about in your personal statement if you're asked.
An excellent tip and useful for thinking about personal statements as well. Jo and Tim, anything to add about preparing for interviews?
I just really emphasize it's about thinking, not knowing. And that also there's a huge amount of variety between colleges, even in the same subject, but don't stress yourself too much. You can't really prepare for them. Even if you think you are preparing for your mock interviews, the odds of it being anything like the actual interview you do is very low indeed. So just remember, it's about thinking. We're not asking you to know particular things. Just calm, work your way through a problem, and it'll all be fine.
There are some, in biology I know, and possibly in some other subjects, I think there's some examples of interviews that have been recorded and put on YouTube, and it's probably worth having a look at those just so you kind of know roughly what to expect. Every interview will be different, so the content will be completely different, but the kinds of questions I think maybe are a bit unfamiliar to some people because they're not used to being asked things where A, they don't know, or B, even the person asking them doesn't know, and it's all very open. So you can see examples of them online that might help just prepare you for what kind of things you're going to be expected to talk about.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And not to plug the Magdalen resources pack again, but we did try and find every possible mock interview we could and have put them in a list. So that might make things a bit easier for you if you have a look on that, which is on the Magdalen website. So staying with the theme of interviews, some of you may be aware that the interviews took place online last year because of COVID, and that they're going to be taking place online again this year. So someone's asked, how do the virtual interviews take place? How do they work? Alexi, do you want to explain a little bit about how they work?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, you will be sent ahead of your interview some instructions for joining the interview, which will it probably won't be through a Zoom platform, but it will be through a platform similar to this. You'll be given plenty of notice about what that platform is so that you can familiarize yourself with how to use it. If you do a technical subject, you might also have be pointed towards some software that can be used a little bit like a whiteboard, so that we can share notes and working out together. And then you will be assigned a set of times for your interviews. So in every subject you have more than one interview, so most subjects have at least 3 interviews. You'll be given those times in advance, and we will try to make the format mirror as far as we can an in-person interview, but we are very realistic about this. It's very challenging for everybody. We don't like doing it. We would much rather see you in person. There are sometimes technical hitches. You don't need to worry about that. If we have real problems, we will reschedule the interview, and we build in time to allow us to do that. So you're never going to be in a situation where we say, oh, sorry, that's it. It just won't happen. And the important thing is just to sort of try to relax in the same way as you would in an in-person interview, and also be sort of reassured that we think very carefully about the questions that we ask, so that we try not to ask you things that are really hard to do without being in person. So, to give an example, in our physics interviews, when we do them in person, when I interview, I often have little props, that I will hand people and say, hey, what do you think this is? Or can you explain to me how it works? Doing that without actually physically being able to hold on to the object is hard. Right? So we really strongly limit those sorts of questions when we're working in an online format. And I'm sure other subjects have other good examples of, the areas where they're very cautious with the way they modify questions. So yeah, I guess, in summary, it'll be as much as possible like an in-person interview, but with the proviso that we all know that there can be challenges with technology, and we're not going to penalize you if you have any problems. We'll always try to accommodate any issues you have, and that we will think very carefully about the sorts of questions that we ask so that they suit the online format.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add about online interviews, although that was very comprehensive, Alexi?
So I would just say that if you anticipate that there might be problems with finding a quiet room, especially if you're at school, do let us know beforehand, or if there are connectivity issues, because it will simply help all of us to avoid certain technical glitches.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, actually. I'll chip in quickly again. Please be proactive if you know you're likely to have problems. If you have issues, sorry, for some reason I'm outside and I think there's an aeroplane. Yeah, so if you know you're likely to have problems, if you have difficulty with connectivity at home, if you have problems at school, please let us know. Just send the college that is interviewing you an email, let them know. And the more notice we have, the easier it is for us to help you out. But if you just wait and leave it and have problems, it's much harder for us to help you effectively.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And there'll be a group of people, a team at each college who are trying to make interviews go as smoothly as possible and offer you support if you have an interview. And we just want to make sure things go the best that they absolutely can. So we've had a question about reallocation. So just to briefly summarize, the reallocation process in terms of Oxford admissions is where we try and ensure that the strongest applicants who apply to each subject every year get the opportunity to have an interview and get places irrespective of what college they directly applied to, which means that we end up just moving people around. Some subjects or always interview you at more than one college, just so different tutors can have the experiences of interviewing you. It's a very normal part of our process, and about a third of students end up being given an offer at a college that they didn't originally apply for. But in relation to this, someone has asked, are applicants who applied directly to Magdalen favoured over those who are redirected to us in the reallocation process? Tim, I wondered if you'd be able to answer this one.
I'm pretty sure this would be the same in every subject, but certainly in my subject, that you soon forget about about that. So there's no, if you're transferred, you just have the same opportunity then as the people who originally applied. We don't assume that people who are applying know anything about the colleges, and in a lot of subjects, a large part of your course is through the departments anyway. So it's really not part of the application process whether you named Magdalen or not. It's irrelevant to us. We just go through the list of applicants we have, and we're looking for the best people from there.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So the next question, I don't know if any of you will have an answer for it, so I'm just going to kind of put it out there, and you can chip in if you'd like to. So what do you think is unique or different about studying at Magdalen over other colleges? I guess it's important to highlight that most teaching is organised centrally by the department, so the quality of teaching that you get across all the colleges should be fairly consistent. But I don't know if you had anything unique to add, Joe?
I think it can only be answered subject by subject for that reason. So I guess when it comes to law, our unique selling point is that we teach every subject in-house. So you can do your entire degree without actually leaving Magdalen if you really, really want to. Although you can choose optional papers we don't teach to get away from us if you want. So I don't think there's another college which can say that. There might be one or two maybe, but it's pretty unusual in Oxford.
Yeah, I wonder. I think that's a sorry, Tim. That's possibly there's a general point to be made there. So the reality is it's hard to make generalized comments about colleges. Everybody thinks their college is the best. So the short answer, of course, to Olivia's question is Magdalen is obviously the best. That's all you need to know. But it's very subjective. There are a few objective things, though, that differentiate between colleges. So one of them are the number of subject tutors in particular subjects. So Joe's mentioned law has a really fantastic group of tutors. Physics is another example of a subject which has quite a large number of tutorial fellows. And you can see this information is available online. So chances are the more tutorial fellows there are in your subject, the more likely most of the teaching is to be in-house. So you'll spend more time with your college tutors if you're at a college where there are lots of college tutors. Now, having said that, that's not necessarily to say that that's like that's like the right thing or better than being in a college where you get to travel to other colleges to go and take advantage of teaching elsewhere. It sort of swings and roundabouts. You make your own decision. So that's one objective thing. Another objective thing is college accommodation. So the different colleges are vastly different sizes. Some of the little colleges in the centre of town have occupied quite a physically small space. And as a consequence, many of their students are either living in college accommodation that is not on the main site, or they're asked to move out for a year during their degree. There are other colleges like Magdalen, for example, that guarantee the accommodation within college for the full duration of your course. And I would suggest that that's another sort of objective thing that you can look at when you're thinking about college choices. It's quite convenient being able to take advantage of college accommodation if you want to do that. But the rest is there's an awful lot of sort of subjective qualities of colleges, which are probably not crucial to your learning experience, but you may want to have a little bit of a think about, like, would you like to be in an environment where there are lots and lots of students? So there are some colleges that have many more undergraduates than colleges that have very small numbers of undergraduates. Some of the colleges are very large and green. So Magdalen is a good example of that. We have quite a large site. Other colleges are kind of in exciting locations in the centre of town. So Jesus University are all are good examples of those.
Tim, did you have anything to add?
Yes, just to expand quickly on the green thing, of course, is one of the things that's special about Magdalen. We've got a huge amount of green space and wildlife within our grounds, and things like otters, badgers, and so on. Obviously, for biology students, this is terrific, and there's a lot of things we can do on site and inspiration there. But I'm sure in many other subjects, there's inspiration. If you find inspiration from the outdoors and nature, then it's fairly unusual to be right in the middle of a city like we are, but to have all of that green space available to us. And so that's one of the things that's unique to this college.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. The main unique thing is always the deer. You know, you come straight out of a tutorial and there's lots of deer for some reason. Okay, so the next question is, how would you describe your relationship with students in the college during like a tutorial session? Christian, do you want to talk a bit about tutorials?
Yeah, sure. So tutorial is very much driven by the idea that this is a community of learners. And so the tutor is also a learner. It's just somebody who is more experienced and more advanced, and who, for that reason, might ask more questions. But we want tutorials to be fully interactive, so that if you have special questions, if you want to pursue certain perspectives in greater depth, then this is really your opportunity. And so that the conversation is really a genuine two-way or three-way conversation, depending on how many people are in the tutorial. And so we basically use tutorials to investigate certain aspects of the curriculum in greater depth. Well, obviously you will have done that through essays ahead of the tutorial, but then we basically use a more discursive way of learning to perhaps pose some of the questions that can't be put as easily in writing, or basically to develop ideas as we go along. So this is very much a joint and communal enterprise.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add about how tutorials work and how you find them?
Yes, so I mean, tutorials are a special thing about teaching at this university, that you do get to discuss with your peers. I think they're very supportive, I would say. I mean, people arrive perhaps feeling like there might be pressure or competition, but that's not, I would say, the way that they typically work. I mean, some people are motivated to feel competitive with their peers, but on the whole, they're very supportive experience. So everybody's in there together, they're discussing things together, they find out how they've been approaching the work that they've done in their own time. And also in terms of how you interact with the tutors, I mean, the tutors within college do get to know you extremely well. Probably better than your teachers at school know you, because it's smaller groups, and certainly better than you can get to know people within a large lecture hall. And so you can tailor those things, you can see what people are interested in, you can see areas that they might be struggling with or need a bit more work on, and then you can develop the tutorials through the year. And as a tutor, I mean, it's a real it's one of the real advantages, I think, of teaching in this system, that I always look forward to the tutorials. I always enjoy them. There's always some stuff that comes up that you haven't prepared, and it's just yeah, I think the students find it enjoyable as well. Sometimes you get put on the spot, but it's in this supportive environment.
As a kind of follow-up from that, what would you do if a student was struggling and they were struggling to get their working on time? Maybe, Alexi, you could talk a little bit about how you'd help a student who's struggling with their workload.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the first thing to say is that our role as tutors is to support you in your that sort of desire to succeed and to learn, about the subject that you're studying. We're not like teachers. We're not there to mark your work and sort of just point out where you went wrong. And in fact, it's fairly common for your tutors not to mark your work in detail. So I won't, if you do some mathematics for me, I'm not going to go through every line of your maths. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, invite you into the tutorial and say, hey, how did you find question 1? I see, you got the right answer. Great. Is there anything you want to ask? Let's move on to question 2. I know you found that tricky. What was the problem? So it's a much more, as Tim was saying, it's a kind of two-way street. It's about a conversation, and it's about us, being supportive. We're not there to try to just tell you where you went wrong, or to try kind of make you feel uncomfortable. It's quite the opposite of that. So very often, when we're quite attuned to how students are doing, in a way that, again, is probably a little bit more sophisticated than the way your teachers might be. So your teachers, if you don't hand something in, they say, hey, why didn't you hand that in? Is a little bit more, we have a little bit more of an insight just by the nature of the way that we interact with you. So if I know, if I see that somebody's struggling, the first thing I might do is find a sort of an opportunity, a quiet opportunity, to ask them if they're doing okay. And then the way I might respond depends on, the answer that I get. So somebody might say, yeah, I am doing okay, but I just, I've kind of overcommitted myself to a series of clubs this last week. And frankly, I should have been doing more work. Great. I will say, do some more work, right? That's one possible situation. Sometimes, though, things are less clear cut. So sometimes it's clear that people, might be having some difficulties that might suggest that they might need to be pointed towards some of the support services that we have to help people. So I think Olivia will probably be able to say a little bit more about all the various sort of elements of student support that we have available within the college. So if you're struggling with work because you're struggling sort of with your own mental health, or you're struggling because you're worried about something that's non-academic, or you're worried about something that is academic, we have lots of ways of helping you with that. And then, of course, I guess the final thing I'll say is that you might just want some extra help. And every year, especially in the run up to exams, I give one-to-one tutorials to people who are struggling generally, to people who are struggling with one particular thing, a whole kind of kaleidoscope of issues that might be categorized as struggling. So we're really there to find ways to help you to succeed, and we're here to be inventive in the ways that we support you as an individual. It's not, we're not just a sort of we're not delivering a service that is well defined. Where we have a whole range of things that we can do to try to help, and we will try to find the right set of solutions for you as an individual.
I know that you were on about welfare, and one of the ways that we provide welfare in colleges through our welfare deans, which Joe happens to be one of. So Joe, I wondered if there was anything you'd want to add about the support we offer students in college.
Sure. I think the key message is there's lots of it at different degrees of intensity, effectively. That at the student level, there's things like peer support, where we've got trained undergraduates and postgraduates who are peers and can talk to you on a sort of confidential, informal basis, just to help you get things off your chest. We've got several members of staff, like the student support administrators, like the mentor for student, and the college nurse, who are always there, whose job it is to help students. We've got a college counsellor. We've got a team of 7 of us on the decanal team, the deans being the people who oversee all of this stuff. There's a lot of people, so much so that the main problem we have is people don't know where to turn to. And so we're putting a lot of force into, for the start of next academic year, how to signpost more effectively and help people find the right type of help. But yeah, we certainly put a lot of energy into support, because it can be a demanding environment.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I guess one thing that's recently happened is our president has a dog now, so people can walk the college dog. And Joe also has a dog that I know you sometimes let people walk your lovely dog. So that's always
She's not very well behaved, so I have to go on those walks. But yeah.
Brilliant. So we've had a question that is vaguely kind of about workload. This asks how long and how many so how many essays are set weekly, roughly how long are they, and how much work do you expect people to do for them? So I guess for those of you who are not necessarily teaching essay-based subjects, what is the weekly workload like? Christian, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so basically the number of essays and the word length are normally in a direct relation. So so basically, if we have to produce several essays per week, then the essays tend to be shorter. And I think a good rule of thumb is that you shouldn't be working more than a standard full-time job. Of course, there will be phases within your degree where you will have slightly more work to do, but I would say on average 40 hours per work is enough, so that you can then take part in extracurricular activities or simply hang out and chill. And I think that is also quite an important part of a degree, not just because we value recreation per se, but your mind will keep mulling things over even while you relax. So we don't expect students to sit in the library 24/7, not at all. I know that especially for freshers, there is a certain risk that they feel obliged to basically work longer hours than they can actually sustain, and we will be watching that tendency as well. So if you treat this as the equivalent of full-time work, then you should be on the safe side.
Brilliant. Tim, do you want to talk a bit more from a science perspective about the workload?
That sounds similar, really. I think so. A typical load in biology would be you'd be doing one tutorial a week and preparing for that. So that would often be an essay, but not exclusively. It could be a short presentation that you give to the group or something else. I mean, you will be doing practicals as well. Some of those will require things to be written up, but all of that is managed so that people aren't being overloaded too much. Again, there's a few points probably in the timetable across the whole course where you'll feel like you've got quite a lot to be doing, and you might need to push a bit more, but on average it shouldn't be. And I think, I mean, one of the issues is that perhaps less than you've been used to. There's nobody telling you, exactly how much you should do, like even word length or some of them are a bit more open-ended, and you're going into the primary literature, and that's like going off on a Google Wanderer or something. That can be infinite if you're not careful, and some people fall into rabbit holes and spend too long doing that. But as tutors, we can spot if you're doing too much and sort of advise on that. So you can write a very good essay and get a lot out of it with a few hours preparation. You don't need to be spending 3 full days on that piece of work. It needs to be proportionate as well to the activity.
Just to add, someone's asked a question specifically for you, Tim, about how much time do you spend in small seminars, so I guess tutorials, during your first year for biology?
Yeah, so you will have 1 tutorial a week. And that will complement, you have the lectures, you have practicals and other activities that go on in the department. So that's with the whole of your course. Some of that will still be in smaller groups, but not necessarily just in your college. But then the tutorials will be 1 hour per week, and those will typically be 2 of you or 3 of you, possibly more depending on what the activity is, but typically about 2 or 3 students per group with one of the modelling tutors. And
Brilliant, thank you. Jo and Alexi, did you have anything you wanted to add about workload or how the work is structured for your subject?
Yeah, I guess I'd say just really quickly, actually, something a little bit more general, which is one thing that's worth knowing is that our terms in Oxford are very short. So the terms are 8 weeks. We have 3 of them. One starts in October, runs for 8 weeks, and then there's a 6-week break over Christmas. Then there's another 8 weeks, which is sort of Easter term. And then there's another 6-week break, and then our final term, which is called Trinity term, is the summer term, where most of the scientists have their exams, whether you're doing your prelims in the first year or your finals exams. For science subjects, they tend to be towards the end of the summer. And then there's a 4-month break over the summer. The thing to realize about that is there are some sort of big pros, and there are some things just to be kind of conscious of, particularly if you're looking at a science subject. So the big pro is you get a big break over the summer, right? And most subjects have exams at the end of most years. So that means that you do have a break. You have the opportunity to do some really interesting stuff over the summer. There is some time to do that if you want to have a job, for example, if you want to go traveling, really good. One of the challenges, though, or the things to be aware of, is that because the terms are so short, firstly, they're very intense. So there is a lot of contact time with all of the science subjects. So in physics, you would typically have, say, 10 hours of lectures a week, at least half a day of practical, 2 tutorials. It's a lot of stuff. As I said, nothing to be it's like a full-time job, as Christiane said, but you don't get a week off. Okay, you have to keep up as you go along. And then the breaks, those 6-week breaks, are really there to help you to consolidate the work that you've been doing over the course of the term, because there's a lot of it, much more than you've been used to. So this is a system that really suits people who are really good independent learners. Because what you need to be able to do is to have a nice work-life balance during the term, so be able to keep up with the intensity, but also do some fun things, have carve out time to spend time with people, join some clubs, that kind of thing. But you also need to be able to settle down for the 6 weeks after that and really work to consolidate the work that you've done. So that's the structure, which is a little bit different from some other more conventional sort of university term layouts, and it's something to be it's something just to be a little bit conscious of when you're thinking about what kind of experience you would enjoy during your time as an undergraduate.
Yeah, that's a really good additional point as well. Thank you. So someone's asked, how easy is it to get to different departments from the college? So kind of location question. Obviously, all the departments are in different places, but I guess quick fire, how close is your department to the college? Tim, do you want to start us off?
10 minutes walk, 15 if you're dawdling. Yeah, 15 minutes walk.
Joe, what about the law faculty?
From my office to the lecture theatre podium, it's 10 minutes if I walk briskly. So 5-10 minutes up the road, yeah.
Alexi?
Yeah, mine's 14 minutes door to door. My office in college to my office in physics. It's a very precise answer. Physics is the extreme end. So you will have for physics and engineering, you're traversing, the whole of Oxford city centre. But I mean, it's 14 minutes, right? It's a very short walk. On a bicycle, it's even faster. So yeah, that's sort of as bad as it gets, which is, as you might imagine, as you might detect, not that bad.
Christian, what about music?
Yeah, so first, it's also about 10 minutes, and it's a nice scenic walk alongside Christchurch Meadows, which I heartily recommend.
Yeah, brilliant. I think what we've kind of shown is that most departments are probably a maximum like 20 minutes away from the college. Most are a bit closer. If you start cycling, then you're going to get there even quicker. But yeah, thank you for covering that. So someone's asked, does the college have any stereotypes and are they true? And I guess I'd just first say that I think lots of Oxford colleges have stereotypes attached to them from various different times. I mean, we're a very, very old university, so some colleges might end up with a stereotype lumped from them from ages ago. But rule of thumb, I would say, don't trust stereotypes about different colleges. You have no idea where they've come from. We, from within the college, don't always know about different stereotypes associated with them, and you don't know who's perpetuating stereotypes, and they're never really a good way of judging a college. You should judge for yourself from the materials that you've seen, from if you can make it to Oxford, or look at different colleges' virtual tour. There's a virtual tour on our site and many other open day sites today, and kind of give you a feel yourself. However, if anyone does have anything that immediately jumps to mind, let me know, but I can't think of one.
Perhaps it is fair to say that colleges are very much defined by the people who are at the college. And when you consider that, the average duration of an undergraduate program is 3 or 4 years, This means that the whole undergraduate population will be completely exchanged after 5 years. And so whatever stereotypes might have come into existence, and they might even have been true at a certain point in history, they cannot remain valid for a long time. And if you're concerned about a certain stereotype, then come here and change it.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you. Someone has asked if there are any, so I guess it's a similar question, but not quite the same. If there are any peculiarities or traditions that are specific to Magdalen. I mean, we've already said we have deer. We're the only Oxford, or I think, and Cambridge College who happen to have deer. Other than that, is there anything that springs to mind?
We have a really good tower as well.
Yeah, we do.
So the highest point, or the highest building in Oxford, is attached to Magdalen. So you go to the top of the tower, all the undergraduates can just book out the keys. You get the most amazing view. It's really good. So we do have some traditions as well. There are various I guess you describe them as feast days. So we find lots of excuses to have dinner in hall together. A lot of these some of these traditions date back sort of close to the foundation of the college. Others have been invented much more recently, but still have a similar kind of slightly nostalgic flavor. I think one of the important things to realize is that all of these events are taken, I don't want to say they're not taken seriously. We do take them seriously, but we take them kind of in the right spirit. So people don't take themselves too seriously. We don't all sort of think we're really important because we're attending these dinners. We just have a really nice time. We celebrate the beautiful surroundings that we're lucky enough to be in. And we learn a little bit about the college history, as I say, far distant, or in some cases, much more recent in the process. So it's an extremely social kind of community environment. It's not a situation where you kind of have a group of people with some sort of where you're kind of forced into doing a whole load of weird things. I think some people have that idea of the place. Not like that at all. These sort of celebrations are really celebrations that are embraced by the community, and they're in a very in a kind of light-hearted but very grateful, we're all really, it's a really beautiful place to be kind of spirit.
One that you reminded me of by mentioning the tower, Alexi, is the May morning tradition. So in Oxford, there's May morning celebrations. So the 1st of May, there is singing that happens to be by our choir, and it's not just like a university tradition, it's massively an Oxford tradition. Like thousands of people, when it was permitted obviously, would come onto Magdalen Bridge, which is just outside the college, and listen to the choir sing from the top of the tower. And then if you're a member of Magdalen, you're able to stand in Magdalen, and you get a better view. So that's a really fun kind of Oxford tradition that Magdalen just happens to be kind of the centre of, which is quite nice. Yeah. So we're coming to the last 5 minutes now, which is probably a good time to ask you all what your top tip for an applicant is. So whether they're sure they're going to apply to Oxford, whether they're not sure, what would you say to a year 12 thinking about applying to Oxford? Tim, do you want to start?
We're fortunate in this country. There's a lot of extremely good universities on a worldwide scale, and they have different flavors to them. So have a look at what's available. Think about what's for you. If you do decide to apply here, then that's great. As we said earlier on, so be yourself, explain why you want to come, but don't stress too much about it. There's lots of other opportunities out there as well.
Joe?
Mine focuses on subject choice, and you might have heard it before if you ever come on a Magdalen tour or anything like that, which is don't pigeonhole yourself. I find students tend to decide quite early on, like in their early teens, what they want to do at university, and then they won't budge from it. And that's fine. You might have genuinely lucked out in picking the right subject for yourself very early on. But when you're, your age, sixth formers, your brain just absorbs information in a way the rest of us get really jealous of. So why not take that capacity and explore a bit? Read around. You might discover that something you've not looked at school is actually the right subject for you. So yeah, avoid pigeonholing yourself too early and explore what you've got the time and energy to do so.
Yeah, brilliant, especially because university, especially Oxford, offers so many subjects that you won't have been able to do at A-level or that you've never heard of before. So definitely look at some of those. Alexi?
Yeah, I think that I would, I think that there are two parts to mine. The first is, I think Tim has already said, be yourself, right? This is for you. This isn't, you're not doing this to please someone else, to kind of fulfill some kind, just, this is all about you and your future. So think about what you want to do and see this, there's a massive opportunity to, to spend 3 or 4 years doing something really exciting that you want to do. So remember to keep focused on what it is you want to do. And then the second part is to say that, remember, and this relates a little bit to what Joe's just said, remember that going to university, whatever subject you study, only broadens the options that you have. Okay? You are not narrowing your options by studying a particular subject. Just because you do physics doesn't mean you have to be a particular kind of thing. I have physics undergraduates who are working in environmental graduates who now work in conservation, management consultancy, industrial design, you name it, medicine. This is just a starting point, a kind of springboard for the rest of your life. Don't feel as though you're making some momentous decision about what you now have to do for the rest of your career. It's not like that. It's a big opportunity, whatever subject you choose, just to go and immerse yourself in the beginnings of, a vast sort of world of work and an opportunity.
Christian?
Yeah, well, I would echo all of that. And if I just might pursue a slightly different perspective now, so in many discussions with current students, I feel that there is a certain anxiety and people want to do something that makes a real difference to society and to the world. And this is very understandable in the age of global crisis, climate change, and so forth. And so quite a few people who have begun their academic studies suddenly question whether this was the right choice because they want to make a real difference. And many of them realize after a short while that actually it was a good choice. And even those who later on become campaigners or who join a political party, etc., they can use their undergraduate degree as a very good springboard for that. So I'm very mindful of what Alexi had said before. So everything that happens at university can only broaden your opportunities.
Great, thank you. There was such brilliant top tips. The only thing I would add is to just use the resources available to you. Everyone has pointed to so many different resources, even just in this hour of questions. And there is so much available for you to read or listen to or look at, things produced by the university, produced by all the different departments for you, or things by other people, other like media organizations, other different universities across the country. Just look at these different things and try and explore them, and just take all the opportunities that come to you. And obviously one top tip that has to be said every time we ever do anything is just go for it. If you do think it's the right thing for you, just give it a shot. Thank you so much for everyone who has been listening or will listen to this at some point, and for asking all of your wonderful questions. There's a few questions that we didn't get round to or are quite specific, and we're going to go through now and try and type you some written responses to make sure that you get an answer to your question. So thank you very much for listening to us today, and enjoy the rest of the open day.